First, I'd like to good recording. There we go. First, I would like to thank our hosts and sponsors, Northwest PBIS, Kaiser Permanente, and the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. My name is Tori Hazelton, and I am the MTSS Regional Implementation Coordinator from Educational Service District 121, or PSESD, and I will be your host for this session. Please feel free to share questions in the chat at the bottom of your screen, and throughout the presentation, we'll try to answer them as many as we can. And so just a couple of quick housekeeping things. If you would like to make sure that you can see closed captioning, that is available. It's at the bottom of your screen there. And just click that button. An additional list of our sponsors who are making this MTSS Fest possible for us today. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to introduce you to Caryn Ward, who is joining us from NIRN, and she will be speaking today on the role of leadership in MTSS. So let's get started. Caryn Ward, I'm going to pass the screen off to you.
Thanks so much, Tori, and welcome back, everyone. I hope that your morning thus far has gone well. Just give me a second to get my screen up here, and we get to have the joy of talking about, leadership within MTSS as we go forward. What I'm hoping that we're able to really accomplish by the end of our next hour together is really be able to articulate that why for leadership, discriminate between the different leadership roles within MTSS implementation. There's been a lot published around the role of champions in the implementation science literature with some meta-synthesis that has been completed over the last year and a half. A lot of publications came out in 2020. We're going to also talk about the role of leadership in solving different types of implementation challenges that we encounter between adaptive and technical leadership. And we're going to do that within an application of a tale of two districts and looking at their data and what they encountered in their MTSS implementation, and really look at how we can use different adaptive leadership strategies to address those different challenges. My goal is to try and make this interactive today through the use of polls and chat. So please, Tori's going to be helping me monitor that chat. So drop questions in. I'm also always happy if somebody wants to come off mute and to hear voices other than my own as we go through the content today. I hope that sounds okay to everybody. All right. So let's talk about leadership and the different roles that we have for leaders within our MTSS implementation. And I always like to kind of activate prior knowledge and get you all thinking about this topic. Is I've got a sentence stem in the chat on the slide there. If you can take a moment to complete that. Leadership within MTSS implementation is important because blank. What would you say is that rationale? So Mark is referencing systems, guiding the vision, clear communication, needing that buy-in from the top down, keeping the focus, guides the work. Wendy saying it starts with us. Communication of the vision, modeling best practice, the accountability checks. I think you guys already know what's on my slides. This will be great. This will be great fun together. And this is absolutely, Tracy, set up to be able to reach all of our students. The larger view of the school in mind, so that systems thinking, absolutely. Oh, we got a couple more coming in here. Communication and support. All right. So I don't know if I have any fans of Brene Brown on the with me today, but this is just one of her favorite. If you've ever listened to her podcast, this is one of, oh, I got yes and a thumbs up. Okay, good. I love this quote that she has. I define as leader as anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and who has the courage to develop that potential. And so I'll just let that sit with you for a moment, because I think you're going to see Brené's quote come to life when we talk about not only what we traditionally think of our formal leaders as executive sponsor roles, but also as champions, right? And I just love how she emphasizes, takes that responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes. Yeah, I'm glad you guys love that book and that podcast. She is just one of my role models and superheroes. So when we think about with leadership roles within MTSS, as I said, the research literature from implementation science is really pointing that there's two distinct leadership roles within implementation. One is the executive leadership sponsor role, and this is the one that I think we more traditionally identify more commonly and that we attend to. But the literature is also really pointed to this role of a champion. So the way that we define the way the literature defines these, is it distinguishes between them is the following. The executive leader is the one that is more formal authority, right? Is in their title as a leader, right? Like a chief academic officer, the principal, an assistant superintendent, the superintendent, right? And they have a level of decision-making power to them. They're internal to that organization, so internal to the district, internal to the school. And they're often not embedded in the day-to-day work of MTSS implementation, right? They're often a little bit of a step removed as we go forward. They can also, though, at the same time be a champion. And the way the literature defines a champion is that they can be formal decision makers, but there also can often be those informal authority and decision making. They're internal to the organization and they have like an intrinsic interest in that needed change. They're driven to succeed. They have a positive approach to the work and they have the very strong conviction or belief in their ability to do the work. So yes, executive leaders can have all of that, right? But as well as we can have folks that have those attributes and those characteristics, but just not have the formal title of leadership in the work. So can you all take a moment and can you picture that person that is a champion within your MTSS work right now, but maybe does not have that formal title? You have a person coming to mind. So I'm going to give you a second. We're going to pop up a poll here to reflect on your current leadership for MTSS within your district or school. And do you have an executive sponsor, a champion, or both roles for MTSS within your work? Oh, there we go. Wendy, I like it. Kinda. You want that that third poll, that third option there. Let's see, and I can't see the results, so if you can just let me know when folks, the responses have slowed down, that would be great. Because Cindy, I think you're the only one that can see him right now.
All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I thought I already unmuted. The beauty of Zoom. I have, it looks like 70% have completed it. So I can go ahead and
Okay.
end.
That's all right. Great.
And I'm going to share results.
So it looks like 67% of you said that you have at least one or both of those roles represented, and 33% said no. So we have to help you get those identified because they're going to be critical to your implementation. So let's give you some strategies on how we can do that. And I know there were some, I think I saw some questions about will the PowerPoint be available? And yes, it will be. All right, so what exactly should an executive sponsor be doing? The activities of an executive sponsor can be different from those of the activities of a champion. So, an executive sponsor activities should be for MTSS should be doing things like identifying existing leadership roles that are relevant to the implementation efforts. So, who are other leaders that need to be engaged with? Assisting with building that collaborative consensus around the work and providing that level of authority to really legitimize MTSS for your district, that this is how we want to serve and support all of our students in our community. Executive leaders are working and communicating with the relevant formal leaders involved to help really define and understand and develop their role and capacity as implementation leaders. Those implementation leaders would be people like principals, assistant principals, maybe if you're having MTSS coaches, who are those leaders, and really communicating with them and further defining and understanding that role. They should be helping us develop processes and structures for regular debriefs around the implementation effort. So if you think about your MTSS leadership team or implementation team, do you have a communication process developed where that executive sponsor is regularly debriefing with the lead of that team and that team to support them in the work and those problem solving opportunities that are needed? And executive sponsors are really critical to ensuring that we have the access to data and the information that we need to make sure everyone is staying informed about the decisions that are being made for MTSS work as well. Fun jobs, right? They're also communicating and working with the school board and those other key community stakeholders that are identified. Champions activities are a little different, right? Now remember, an executive sponsor can be a champion at the same time and engaging in these activities, but we can also have a champion that's not a formal leader that is engaging in this work. So they're doing things like they're advocating for the implementation processes and selective practices within MTSS. Why are we engaging in this universal screening process? Why do we need to build that menu of interventions that intensify as they go up the tiers, as an example? They're engaging in that relationship building, both with internal staff as well as external stakeholders. They're planning and facilitating the implementation team meetings. I love this one. They're creating a reflective and safe learning collaborative environment. When we're implementing MTSS, it does really well when your organization, your school, your district has a culture of learning, meaning we get started, we get better, and we're driven by data, right? So champions help create that safe, reflective environment to be able to have that mindset and to do that work of getting started and getting better. And it's saying it's okay, we're going to fail. And actually, when we fail is when we learn the most, right? Things are not going to be perfect, but we have to keep with it and get better. They're very much involved with the implementation of the selected practice or program. And very much, and what they mean by at the ground level, at the research level, would be at that classroom, right? At that classroom and school level work there. They're helping us examine data to troubleshoot and remove barriers. And they're really facilitating discussion around a team membership that we're ensuring is diverse and equitable. We talked this morning, if you were in the opening session, about there was a lot of movement in the chat around how critical having community members and families involved in this work is, so that there is a shared vision for MTSS in your district, in your community. So, and I, again, love this quote from some of the research that says champions and executive sponsors should communicate and support one another. And just as important, executive leader sponsors should cultivate the leadership attributes that are within champions that may not be folks that may not have that formal title. So when we think about what are those attributes that we should be cultivating within our champions is things like influence. They should have sufficient capital, social capital, with staff to foster trust and authority to really prioritize our MTSS work and get us going. Back when I was in my district, there was a key first grade teacher at one of my elementary buildings where she had such a level of influence that I knew if I did not foster that, I would be stuck in my implementation work. I can still picture Gretchen clear to a day, and that I needed her. Even though I had a formal title as a district leader, I knew that without Gretchen by my side, our literacy work for MTSS was not going to get to where we needed it to go. Ownership. Champions have to be willing to own the implementation work, and we want them to volunteer for that role, right? We don't want the voluntold, we want them owning that work. Physical presence. And I know this with the pandemic, physical could be via Zoom, not just in person, right? So we want to think about that. Our champions are those that are on the groundwork and understand the work of our classroom teachers and our interventionists and our school leaders to really be able to provide that knowledge of the system, the information, the coaching, and keeping the staff engaged. When we're thinking about our champions, we also need them to persist. We talked this morning that implementation takes time. It can take 2 to 4 years, and systemic change is hard, right? So we need to cultivate this persistence that we're not willing to give up. We're keeping that vision of serving all of our students, so that they can have equitable outcomes, and keeping that at the forefront and persisting and working through those barriers with energy and that resourcefulness that is needed. And then finally, as we talked about the importance of, shared accountability, is that our champions really foster a participatory leadership style versus the top-down style of leadership. So they're including the colleagues in the decision making and welcoming feedback, and modeling the use of that feedback is very critical so that we're creating a safe environment for our staff and our community members that allow for that learning, as well as the empathy, which is so very important when it comes to relationship building. So let me do a quick stop and see, is there any questions about those 5 attributes? Okay. If not, I'm going to ask Cindy to pop up our next poll, and to take a minute and just reflect on champion attributes. Which attribute, as a champion, do you want to focus on strengthening this year? If you're playing a champion role, which of those is an area that you want to strengthen?
Right, you guys should all be able to see the poll. Looks like we're at about 30%, so we're getting there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And if it's helpful, I can put the definition of those attributes back up there for a moment, if that's helpful. Good question. Is influence also inspiration? Yeah, I think inspiration would be another way of saying stimulating that practice, right? So that they're inspiring, they're motivating to others to engage in the MTSS work and those critical components of MTSS. Great question.
All right, it looks like it's slowed down.
Okay.
Go ahead and close it. Share.
Oh, okay. So we're pretty evenly split among those that responded, with 30% on influence and 28% on the participatory leadership. Ownership, but that came in third there, and then that physical presence and persistence. I don't think we're educators. We are going to be persistent, especially we've all demonstrated that over the last, in particular, the last year and a half for sure during this pandemic. That doesn't seem to want to end. All right, let's keep going. So when we think about implementation, right, it's really a systemic change journey for MTSS. And what I'd like to do is, as we talk about the different types of implementation challenges that we as leaders encounter, do this within a tale of two districts. So always love to share data. This is data from two real live districts in the Midwest. And this is their data regarding the percentage of K-6 students that were meeting reading expectations. Over time, District A is the blue line and District B is the orange line. Feel free to drop off in the chat or come off mute. What strikes you about this data? What do you see happening here? So District A is took off. Yep. There's a dip prior to the takeoff. Yeah, that famous implementation dip. Growth versus stagnation. District B, yep, that flatlining that you're seeing. Oh, Mark's predicting, did District A go slow to go fast? Any, so let me give you a little bit of context information about the districts. So the districts are very similar in demographic size. District B is actually a little bit smaller by about 500 students, but they each serve around 6,000 students. Their demographic makeup, though, is a little bit different. Demographically, District A has 3 times the size of an English language learner population than District B. District A also has a slightly larger free and reduced population than District B. In terms of race makeup, District A's got a larger Hispanic Latino population. Both districts are comparable in terms of white, Asian, African American, or Black as examples. In terms of their curriculum work and instructional practices, both District A and District B have the exact same core instructional literacy program happening. When it comes to intervention planning, District A and District B also overlap. They use some of the same interventions, but District B has twice as many interventions as District A. So with that context, anyone want to make some predictions of what happened in the implementation? Feel free to drop those in the chat. So pretty similar demographics. Leadership was different. Jacqueline says falling back on existing intervention structures. B took on too much to do things well. Not maybe fidelity wasn't in place. Stretched too thin. These are some good predictions. District A had that focused approach and how they worked with students and didn't try everything. I love it. B looks good on paper. All right, well, let's dive in and take a look at what implementation challenges they faced and how leadership responded. So to give you a little bit more information of where they were in terms of stage of implementation as well, District A is in full implementation. They made it to having greater than 50% of schools within the district implementing MTSS to fidelity. And they saw improvement in outcomes. We've got District B is still in initial implementation because they haven't met that benchmark of their number of schools at fidelity yet as we go forward. So we know that leaders face in implementation different types of challenges, right? And we've encountered lots of challenges in the last year and a half, right? So some of the challenges we encounter are those that we would call technical challenges or team challenges. They're the challenges that everybody agrees on that there is a challenge. Everybody agrees on what the challenge is, and we have solutions that are readily available to us, right? So an example I love to use is we don't have sub coverage, right? Everybody agrees that that's a problem. Everybody agrees on what that problem is. And usually as leaders, principals, administrators, we've got tricks up our sleeve of how we get that class covered. Wicked problems or adaptive challenges, on the other hand, are those messy ones that try to fight back on us, right? So those are the types of challenges where not everybody even agrees that there is a problem. Not everyone agrees on what the problem is, and we don't have solutions readily available. We have to try different things and iterate our way to a solution as we go forward. And those are the ones that are challenge that are, as it says on the slide, they try to fight back when we solve them because sometimes things get worse before they get better. So just this is a little bit of an old visual, but when we think about those, when we're close to certain on what the problem is and we're close to agreement on that problem, that's where the simple and technical live. The further agreement we are on what the problem is and in agreement that there is a problem, that's the complexity where the zone of complexity where those adaptive challenges live. I don't know about you, but at times I felt the past year and a half we were going towards anarchy with the pandemic and our political situation, right? So, but in implementation, we often can get stuck in this red here in that zone of complexity. So to help us determine whether as a leader, whether I'm in a champion or an executive leadership role within MTSS work, I've got to stop and assess my challenge in my context and to determine, do I have an adaptive problem here or a technical problem? So I'll give you a minute. These are some of the questions that we ask ourselves to help us determine this. So are there legitimate yet competing perspectives? Is there a lack of agreement about how the problem is formulated and therefore a lack of agreement about the solutions? Are there deeply rooted and different perspectives on the issue at hand? Those could be philosophical, moral, political, maybe from a pedagogy perspective. Will the solutions and the implementation require iterative learning, meaning we're going to put a plan in place, we're going to do the plan, we're going to study it, and we're going to make changes? If by implementing the solution, this is my favorite question to ask, is it going to generate feelings of loss, grief, disloyalty, or someone feeling incompetent? And then the last question is can the primary locus of control responsibility not be to a single entity or a person? If you answer yes to more than one of those questions, you've got an adaptive challenge on your hand that we're having to face as leaders. So, and when we think about those adaptive challenges, they require different types of strategies than a technical challenge. So I just want to stop for a quick minute. Can anyone think of an adaptive challenge that they're facing right now or that they've faced in the last 6 months that they answered more than yes to? Would they be willing to share those in the chat, or feel free to come off mute if you are allowed to? I think the masking mandates in schools in some places, I work with different states all over the country, is a huge issue, is an adaptive challenge right now. I can't see you all, but I saw one person head nodding. Can you all think of another adaptive challenge? Union issues, unions. Where the local control can be. Absolutely. Learning loss. Different views on that. Some people would say learning loss is a racist term. What does it mean to be in a least restrictive environment? Inclusive practices, referrals on the playground, onboarding a lot of new staff. All right, so it sounds like these questions resonated with you and you were able to come up with some adaptive challenges. Well, as I said, adaptive challenges require different types of strategies, and this is really pulling on Heifetz and Laurie and there's colleagues from Harvard in looking at adaptive leadership. And basically what Heifetz and their colleagues found was that when we take an adaptive a problem and we try to use a technical solution, right, we can actually make the problem worse. We can exacerbate that challenge. So adaptive challenges require different types of strategies. And Heifetz and his colleagues identified those that are listed here on the slide, and thinking about how we get on the balcony, how do we protect the voices, ensure that we have diversity within those voices, giving the work back to those that are to the people, and how that work impacts them, keeping the focus on the work, on the vision of what we're trying to accomplish. We're going to see how regulating distress is about often can relate to maintaining the pace of the work and what we're trying to accomplish. And identifying that it is an adaptive challenge and then getting on that balcony from a systems view. So let's dive in and look at how did District A and District B address their implementation challenges? How well did we do in using these adaptive leadership strategies? So remember, here is our data and what our outcomes were of the districts. And let's see what happened in their MTSS journey. So when District A and District B, when we looked at trying to get on that balcony, right, being able to see the forest through the trees and hearing different perspectives and views, and really identifying whether there is an adaptive challenge and what that is. When District A engaged in that, they identified that they had way too many practices happening. Their professional learning was not addressing the competencies needed or using enough adult learning practices. They realized coaching was needed, and they were not engaging teacher and empowering student voice within the MTSS process. District B, on the other hand, said we have great staff and program of interventions. When we think about coaching is for new teachers only. Professional development is done. We do that at the beginning of the school year. We got our designated 3 days. And we support attendance at conferences and the sharing of the learnings. So if we go a little bit deeper, remember District B said we have that great beginning of the year professional learning and we send staff back. What District A did was they tried to map out by role in MTSS work what MTSS training topics was professional learning needed on. And they also identified a district process and criteria for selecting and planning those professional development experiences. Excuse me. so that they were purposely and systematically planning that professional development based on some of the adaptive challenge that they identified about having too many practices, coaching was needed, needing to ensure that the professional learning was of high quality as they go forward. If we look at the adaptive strategies of regulating distress and maintaining disciplined attention. So maintaining disciplined attention is keeping that vision at the forefront and always making decisions based on that vision and not being distracted by the other things that can happen. As those other things happen, asking the question of how will that impact our work as we go forward. And regulating distress is really that strategy of pacing the work so that we are not overwhelming the staff and other leaders who are engaged in the work, right? Which I know that's been a challenge the past year and a half with the pandemic because there's so much to do. But what District A focused on was starting small and getting better. Specifically, they identified a small number of teachers from specific grade levels to focus on initially in their implementation work. So they didn't go big to the whole district all at once. And the implementation team purposely stepped back, did some alignment and leveraging work of new priority to support the current literacy emphasis. Okay. District B took the approach of going big. All school staff must be trained in the literacy practices in the program at the start of the year, and all staff meetings and supports focused on those new priorities. So if we think about District A, really use this PDSA model of ramping, right? The learning ramp, where they took a cohort of teachers, implemented the plan, they did the plan, they studied how the plan worked, they made adjustments to their implementation work. Using what they learned, they then identified another cohort group of teachers to provide the professional learning, do the work with. They then studied how that was working, made adjustments. The adjustments they found in cohort 2, they fed back to the cohort 1 teachers and included them in the learnings, and then added another third cohort. So they didn't allow the PD schedule to dictate with the implementation planning. They followed a very systematic process of starting small, getting better, and using data to drive the decision making of when they were ready to add on additional cohorts of teachers participating in implementation. So changing on purpose. When we think about the implementation strategies of giving the work back to the people and protecting the voices, often protecting the voices is about providing a space, a very safe space, respectful space, an empathetic space where folks can share their feedback and thoughts. If we go back to that question of that adaptive challenges often spur feelings of loss, disloyalty, grief, etc., that sometimes those voices come across not always in the most easiest way that they can be heard, right? Folks are feeling stress, and that can be very challenging. So how do we provide that safe venue so that we're able to get their feedback and hear their voices in a way that is productive, right? Giving the work back to the people is really about empowering our stakeholders in the implementation efforts and taking a shared accountability model, and this not being one person. So if we're looking at mental health implementation supports, how are we engaging community mental health providers? Are they part of our implementation team? Do we have feedback and communication loops built with them to support the implementation work as examples? So if we look at what District A and District B, how things went down, District A, school leadership teams were meeting monthly to review and use data for improvement. They engaged in staff survey and listening sessions. They also really wanted to get student voice, so they engaged in the activities of doing empathy interviews with students and shadowing with students to really understand that experience. District B had their principals meet twice a year with the school leadership team to review the data and follow the typical improvement plan process. And the improvement plan wasn't written by the team. They actually contracted an outside consultant to write their improvement plan for them. And then they just used a standard staff survey. to get feedback. So what did we see? In District A, teachers reported on the support that they felt needed. So they also, in addition to the listening sessions, they did a staff survey result specifically to their MTSS work. They also looked at from PD evaluations, and staff were feeling that they felt supported and that they were gaining in the knowledge and the skills needed. All right, and if they were receiving the coaching that they needed. So if we think back to those tale of the two districts here, and our results, what do you folks think? Was your hypotheses or what your prediction was on what you thought was happening with the district, was that confirmed, disconfirmed? Are you feeling at what are you thinking? Thoughts in the chat. I also was trying to make sure we left room for discussion and conversation. And I do have another poll coming up for you. So I see, Mark, you put in the chat, what do you think are the drivers of District B behavior since it appears to be so common? I'm curious to see what others think to that question. I think some of it is we do schooling and work as we always have done it, and we not be aware of other ways to do it. I'm not sure the system or others always reinforce us in the best way to engage in those different ways of doing work. I also think sometimes we don't have the right support to help us engage in that different work. Often this is changing a culture within an organization, and having that external support to help make that change and to show up and ask those hard questions and to provide that reinforcement can help be a starter towards that going forward. I'm curious to see what others think. We still have 110 of you on the line. So, Cindy, are people able to come off mute by any chance? Or?
Well, if I can get myself unmuted, I believe they can if they choose, and I
Okay,
could be
if they
wrong.
choose.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure because I know in some webinar styles you can't. Oh, and Brandon, that's great. You're connecting it to that difference between true admin buy-in versus the compliance box, right? To checking the box. I agree with that as well. And Mark, that's another excellent observation. Focusing on everything means focusing on nothing. Any others? Oh, here we go. Now you guys are. Thank you for engaging with me. Becca says, if we're, one factor could be that people are spread very thin and won't be able to make the time to really invest in the process with fidelity. And B is more common. It's challenging to see what we think is working is not working for all. Yeah, Laura, great point. It's not really understanding the way that MTSS requires a shift in classroom, school, and district practices, just giving it the same as they do other initiatives. Yeah, and Tori, the leadership skills to address the adaptive challenges. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so I have another poll for you. If you think of a current implementation challenge that you're worried about, that is happening, or maybe it happened in your previous efforts, was that an adaptive challenge or a technical challenge? And if it was an adaptive challenge, what is one of those adaptive leadership strategies that you would want to try? And I can, let me get that list back up. Everyone's probably going to need to close their eyes as I get back to that. Oh, there it is. So Cindy, if we can get that poll up, that would be great.
All right. You should see it.
So think about that current implementation challenge. Is it adaptive or technical? If it's adaptive, what's a strategy, one of those strategies that you're going to give a go at? Got regulating distress, so important as we think about all that's on the plate. Giving the work back to the people. Yeah, getting on the balcony. That's often the first one we have to engage in. Mark, good one too. The instinct is to avoid or back off. I had a leader once that would just kind of put their head down, and if they ignored it long enough, they thought it would go away. It was very frustrating. Identifying the challenge, not being in the react mode. It's always not easy to step back. Absolutely. Excellent point, Lisa, on modeling the empathy that's needed in the change as those champions do. We seem to be slowing down in the chat. Are we slowing
We're,
down at
yeah, we are slowing down in the poll, so I can close it if you would like.
yeah, that would be great.
All right, I'm sharing the results. You all should be able to see that.
Yeah, 86% an adaptive challenge and then 14% technical. I love technical challenges. Don't you always feel so good when it's the technical challenge? You can like check that box and mark it off the list. But the adaptive challenges are the ones that keep us up at night for sure. Or at least they keep me up at night. All right, guys, I'm so sorry. Close your eyes. I just have one slide left and then we'll have some time for questions and discussion. I hope you're okay that I had a little bit of buffer built in here. When we think about solutions to adaptive challenges, right, those messy ones that are devious and they fight back on us, some things to keep in mind. Sometimes when we attempt to solve them, they'll actually lead to more wicked problems. There's not a stopping rule. It's an iterative process, right? Our contexts are always evolving and changing. So we have to keep trying and using data in those adaptive strategies to get better. And they're not always true or false in our solutions. Sometimes one's better versus worse. And honestly, we can't always understand the problem fully without trying something. And what we have found in our work is that by addressing the adaptive challenge, you may start with one, but you'll find by the end you've actually engaged in all the different adaptive strategies in order to make that progress. That's part of that iterative trying different solutions to get better over time. So think back to those champion attributes of being persistent, having that influence, and keeping the work going forward, because those attributes of a champion is what is needed as we address those adaptive challenges. All right, so there are resources on our Active Implementation Hub. You will see this month, it's coming. We are releasing a new a module on cultivating leadership with some tools. We have a new tool that's coming out on identifying those champions and those different leadership roles and cultivating them. So be on the lookout for that. It's any minute with my IT staff. It's the work is done, the content is built. It's just in that final publication stage. So please be on the lookout for that. I hope that is helpful to you. As we wrap up, we do have about 10 minutes for any questions or final thoughts or discussion if you would like to come off mute. But as you leave, if you could just do the fun exit ticket for me of like, what's one action that you're planning on taking in your implementation planning? And then finally, I just hope you continue to believe in the possibilities, right? That we're planting those seeds and they're going to shoot up, that sometimes we don't always see that great work that's happening under the ground and establishing that roots when we think about MTSS work and what it takes to build that infrastructure. So I'll go back to leaving this exit ticket up And I thank everybody if you'll put that action item in there, and I'll be here if there's any other questions in the chat or if folks want to come off mute. I hope the rest of MTSS Fest goes well.
Thank you so much, Caryn, for such an awesome session. I do have an information slide to put up that has
Okay.
final questions and or information if they have final questions. Let me get that shared here really quickly. And so if there is any questions, if you were unable to get a question answered or whatever by the time we close the session, please feel free to email at that address you see there. Include your session name or the presenter in the subject line. And then I definitely want to then give the time back over to Caryn and folks who have questions, but I just wanted to put that up there for folks who just has some info about clock hours and further questions.
Thank you, everybody, for the notes in the chat and what you guys are identifying as action items.
I don't know.
You okay, Tori?
No, I have a question. Sorry, somebody was coming
Hey,
in.
Laura.
Hey, Caryn. So in your work with implementation science and MTSS, did you guys have a framework or a rubric that you found the most useful for teams to walk through? So some of like the RTI network implementation guides, those types of things?
Yeah, so Lori, we've been using a lot for at the district level, a guide, the district capacity assessment, and then at the school level, the fidelity measures of either like the TFI reading or the TFI behavior, and using those as kind of like a blueprint to kind of guide the work.
Okay, but then that leaves nothing for math, right?
There actually is a TFI for math that the state of Minnesota developed and has been starting to use. So, and then there's been some work with the NCTM, the National Council for Teaching Mathematics.
Great, thank you.
Does that help, Laura?
Totally.
Yeah, it's hard to say like there's one blueprint or roadmap out there. And we really need more research. When you go to the research on MTSS, the problem is the science has either been on like in reading or within behavior. There's very little published research on integrated models.
Yeah, that's what I'm finding too is, and the words around MTSS is just, some people think it's only behavior, some people think it's only reading. And so it's really hard for implementation to start from the fact of it's a whole different way of thinking. And then I've been just doing some reading around just comprehensive school mental health and realizing how basically overall student and staff well-being actually fits in and collaborates with that also.
Yeah, and within that, Laura, have you seen the interconnected systems framework?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that their AIR received, American Institutes of Research received an IES grant that they've been working on the last 2-3 years to develop an integrated fidelity tool and to do some of that integrated research. So I think it's coming. It's just not published yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Nope,
And
totally
then,
appreciate that. I'll be on the lookout for it.
yeah, and then one other resource that I can send you, Laura, if helpful, is the state of Colorado worked with one of their local universities where they did a bunch of interviews with state and regional local leaders across different states to do a synthesis of MTSS frameworks and models to identify where are the like in the identification of the critical components of MTSS, where is there we like there's 90% overlap in most places, but there's also a small a percentage of distinctions between them. I have that summary, research summary, if you would interested in that
Yeah,
as well.
that's cool. You still have my email? Just shoot it to me, or do you need
I
it?
think I should still have your email. Let me
Yeah.
check real quick. I had it
Okay.
closed because I didn't want my email flashing while I was
Oh,
sharing
yeah,
this.
that is so true.
I've learned the hard way not to do that when I'm running off one screen like I am today.
Yeah, it is so crazy.
Yep. So, well, it's so good to hear your voice. I hope you're doing well.
Oh, yeah, I'm doing well. I'm actually retiring October 1.
You
But
are?
I
Congratulations.
am. Thank you. Thank you. But still learning.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah, well, we never stop learning, right?
right, right. And still doing some work with Bill Rishlicka around special ed admin prep. So this is good info
Well,
to carry forward.
good. And are you still working with Wendy at all? Because I think she went to UW, right? To
I
work
have
with,
no idea. I haven't heard anything from Wendy lately. I don't know where she is.
oh, all right.
I
The
know.
last I heard, she went to work at UW with some of their special ed leadership prep
Yeah,
programs.
she's not there anymore because that's what I'm
Oh,
doing
she's
work with
not.
now. No, she's not doing work with Excel anymore. So I
Oh,
don't
I wonder
know.
where she went.
She may be with some of the other, yeah, I don't know. I have to check with
Huh.
her.
I'll have to get back. I'll have to. It's been a while since I've seen her.
I know. Check in with everybody.
All
But
right.
thank you.
Thanks, Laura. And it looks like I got one more in the chat here. What would be one what advice would one give if a district is choosing to do both MTSS, new to all, even though some say it's not, we're doing it not calling that. I love when they do that. And moving to neighborhood schools, both big system changes. Believe in both and concerned for all staff taking this on and doing it well for kids. That is a lot. I would, Jenny, are you still on? Cindy, is she still on?
Here, I was just hoping that question would have been private, but somehow it
Oh,
got public.
oh gosh,
All
I'm
good.
so sorry. So
It's all
I'm
good.
so sorry, Jenny.
They're used to me asking questions, so go ahead.
No,
I'm here.
I can message you in the chat. How about we do that?
No, answer it. I mean, if my colleagues are still on here, they might have the same question. Let's see if I
Okay,
still
all
have a
right.
job in the morning.
I am so sorry. I screwed that up.
That's okay. I mean, it's a fair question. I want to do it right for kids, so.
No, it is a fair question. Tori's gonna be like, Karen, I'm gonna get feedback. Let's see. So
No, I won't give you feedback.
that is a tough one, right? Because I agree with you. Those are like two huge systemic efforts. I would so I would take those critical components of MTSS, right? And I would look at what you're doing around moving to neighborhood schools, and I would prioritize focusing on one or two of those critical components of MTSS in a specific area as you get started with your neighborhood schools. Do you know what I mean? Like, prioritization is going to be needed, I would think, with those two big efforts. Do you know what I mean? And really look at alignment and leveraging of those components and the practices, because what you don't want to have happen is it fall on the teacher to do that work because they can't, right? So that alignment and that leveraging work of the underlying philosophy behind both the critical components to a neighborhood schools model and MTSS. Look at the alignment. If there's disconnect, how are you going to rectify that? And then prioritize components that you're going to focus on as you move forward. and be really explicit in the communication of the vision of how the two fit together. Do you know what I mean? Is what comes to my mind as a way to start. If district has not looked at the alignment of the underlying philosophies to both, or looked at the alignment between of the components, it's gonna clash when it comes at the implementing, like on the day-to-day level potentially. Do you know? And I'm not sure I know all the ins and outs of the neighborhood schools model to be able to like give concrete examples. I don't want to misspeak on that. My guess is there would be a lot of alignment, but your teachers and your students are going to experience if there's misalignment, and they'll experience it quickly. Do you know what I mean? Does that help at all?
It confirms. I mean, that's where our PD team is trying to go. So
yeah, because then with that prioritization, and then in your PD, you're going to want to be really, you're going to want to leverage the PD to accomplish that you know what I mean? Like an alignment there. It's the same thing when a school's implementing, this always seems complicated, but probably more simplistic, like changing hearts and minds, second step, PBIS, restorative practices. You only have so much PD, right? So how do you look across and say what's common to all that we want to make sure we nail hard in our PD, that we can leverage that time for, and then what is going to be unique that we need to be planning for?
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, it confirms. That's just what we're going to do. Try our best to, and I'm learning in my brain for MTSS because we individually worked really hard at the RTI model because that's what we knew and what we wanted to make sure we're check and balances and working with kids where they needed it, and is it working? And when I first heard of MTSS, it was like, well, it kind of sounds like we're doing that. The more I've learned today, it's a different, it's not the same. There's big critical components that have to be in place and for it to work successfully for kids. So that caused me to pause too, like, oh, this is not just a bird walk from RTI to MTSS. No. So I have a lot more learning to do, and I always want to learn side by side with my teachers, but I kind of want to be just like maybe 3 days ahead.
Yeah, it's like, just in time, just enough is fantastic, but you got to be a little bit ahead to do that. A little bit ahead,
right, and not have the mindset this is the same as RTI, because that's how that would have been one of my sales pitches. And there are things that are alike, and that we can, linking the known to the new is very important. But we're linking the known to the new to neighborhood schools as well. So just have some work to do, and we'll go slow. Hopefully that will be honored. And
yeah, it's that regulating the distress to go of going slow. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and once Pioneer gets it, we'll get it, and it will go great.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Right. Well, I wish you luck in the school year, and if anything we can do, just let us know.
All right. Thanks for today. It was very helpful.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again, everybody. If you have any other follow-up questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to email at the email that's on your screen. And I just want to say one more big thank you to Caryn. This was awesome. Even I was scribbling notes as you were talking. So
glad it's helpful. And I wish everybody that they enjoy the rest of MTSS Fest and try to have a great start, an amazing start to the school year. We're going to manage through the pandemic.
We're going to get there.
We will. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.